In the last video, we talked about how peace between Palestine and Israel appears impossible for now. Too many Palestinians are holding on to the fantasy that the entire territory of the State of Israel rightfully belongs to them, and that they can win the struggle, while too many Israelis are paralyzed by fear and distrust to loosen restrictions and hand an olive branch. A lasting peace seems like a distant dream. If anything, we currently seem to be moving away from it rather than towards it. However, instead of tackling this seemingly intractable problem in one go, what if there were a way both sides could take a baby step in the right direction towards peace? What if there were a way that Palestinians who do want peace weren't handcuffed by a corrupt elite only interested in prolonging the conflict? What if Israelis had the opportunity to dip their toe in the water and see the benefits of loosening restrictions and cooperating with peaceful Palestinians? Maybe the way to peace isn't a one-state or two-state, but a city-state solution. In this video, we explore what Salam, a Palestinian charter city, could look like, and how it could be a stepping stone on the path towards a lasting peace. The concept of charter cities grows out of the ideas of Paul Romer, an economist who argues that liberal laws and institutions, when widely accepted, are what enable the prosperity and relative stability of developed countries. The challenge, which can seem insurmountable, is how to reform the laws and institutions of an entire country when those necessary reforms may be unpopular with politicians, the public, or both. Rather than try to tackle this immense problem all at once, charter cities create a smaller-scale pilot study, one that bypasses political resistance and avoids public backlash. So, how to start a charter city? First, you need to find an empty plot of land within the host country. Then establish by charter that this area will be governed by clearly defined liberal laws and institutions. Residents of the host country, if they like the new rules, will be able to vote with their feet and freely move to the charter city. There is no colonial imposition here, as citizens, by voting with their feet, are freely choosing these new rules. There is presently no example of a charter city in this pure form, but the success of its principal components can be seen in city-states such as pre-2020 Hong Kong and Singapore, as well as the advances achieved by special economic zones such as Shenzhen. The goal of a charter city is to eventually transform the economy and governments of the host country after it sees the success these liberal laws and institutions can bring. With our Palestinian Charter City, we will be going a step further as we want to transform the culture as well, showing Palestinians the benefits of peace and coexistence. From now on, I will be referring to our Palestinian Charter City as Salam, which I believe is appropriate as it is the Arabic word for peace. There are many ways Salam could provide an opening towards a lasting peace where previous plans and programs have failed. Firstly, establishing a charter city would allow us to circumvent a corrupt elite that controls Palestinian politics and establish functioning institutions that can build peace and prosperity. A charter city would serve as a pathway for implementing peace-building measures such as building connections between Israelis and Palestinians and establishing an education system that fosters peace. Secondly, Salam could serve as a way of building trust between Palestinians and Israel. Currently, the Israeli government is reluctant, ostensibly for security reasons, to loosen restrictions on Palestinians, despite knowing that these restrictions inflict a huge economic toll on Palestinians. A charter city committed to peace would show the Israeli government, and better, a majority of Israelis, that not only are there Palestinians who believe in peace and coexistence, but that they would be engaging a civil authority that they could pragmatically work with. Most importantly, Salam could offer Palestinians a new vision for a better kind of future, one they could actively build if they embraced peace and coexistence. A charter city could show all Palestinians what's possible instead of holding on to the fantasy of one day taking back all the land that is now Israel and Palestine. There are already Palestinians like entrepreneur Bashar Masri who believe in a peaceful and prosperous Palestinian state. Salam would give them a home where they could unleash their potential. For a charter city to become a reality, the support of the Israeli government and the international community will be essential and inescapable. Ideally, it should also enjoy the active support of the Palestinian government. This can only happen if each party sees that it will benefit from this project in some way. As we will see, our charter city will have to be located on Israeli-controlled Area C lands. Our city-state will also need to be supplied with water, electricity, and telecommunications, many of which will likely come from Israel. Gaining Israel's support will require addressing their primary concern, security. It is therefore critical that security be handled by a credible international security force. It is also essential that the city-state fosters a culture of peace in order to get Israel's buy-in and maximize the opportunities for economic cooperation. The establishment of our charter city will also require support from the international community in the form of funding, expertise, and in this unique situation, security. Persuading the international community should not be difficult, as many countries are already supporting projects throughout Palestine, and a significant portion of Palestine's economy is dependent on foreign aid. A charter city would give foreign nations who want peace the opportunity to do so without fearing that such funding will be misappropriated. We will also need international partners to run critical institutions while the city develops its own culture and competencies. This international partner could be one nation or a committee of nations that both parties could agree to. Initially, there will also need to be international security forces such as peacekeepers to ensure that the international agreements and the new liberal rules are enforced and observed. This will be required until local, capable security forces can be trained and established. Ideally, this charter city would be supported by the Palestinian government. However, as we will see, that is not absolutely necessary. Now, you might wonder, why would the Palestinian government support a structure that bypasses them? Fortunately, there are a few ways the Palestinian Authority would benefit from a charter city. Firstly, they would gain a new source of revenue, as a portion of the new wealth that the charter city generates would be transferred to them. Secondly, a charter city would give them access to the outside world by means that are not controlled by Israel, as this charter city would have its own airport. Thirdly, international pressure and the promise of investment will make it difficult for the government to reject a charter city. Finally, a promise could be made so that our charter city never becomes the capital of the Palestinian state, so that it would not affect future peace negotiations. For our charter city Salam, we will need a piece of mostly empty land big enough to support a significant population and with enough space for an airport. It should also have its own international border to facilitate access and trade with the outside world, so it cannot be suffocated should an obstructive or uncooperative Israeli or Palestinian government emerge. Ideally, our charter city would be located in a fairly central location within the existing Palestinian state. For these reasons, as well as political feasibility, we can see our charter city will need to be placed on Area C lands. How could Salam, our charter city, work? I propose a 123 square kilometer plot of land located fully within Area C lands that lies on the Jordanian border between Jerusalem and Amman. Though much of the land is hilly, there is enough space to support a city of at least 500,000 with sufficient flat area to accommodate an international airport. At present, it is also largely empty, though there are 3 small Israeli settlements within its boundaries. In order for a Palestinian city-state to truly be Palestinian, property ownership and long-term leases should only be allowed for Palestinians. In order to garner Israel's support and foster a culture of peace, I propose that those who buy property and participate in government must make a vow of peace, one that would involve recognizing UN-recognized nations and rejecting violence. Yes, it may just be a symbolic gesture, but symbolic gestures can be one of the critical early steps that help establish a new culture. This vow of peace could also enable enhanced mobility privileges for its citizens, which would greatly increase the number of economic opportunities available to them. Currently, residents in the West Bank and Gaza have green IDs. Unless granted a special waiver, they are not allowed to travel to Israel or to the other Palestinian territory. Salam residents could be granted a blue ID, one that East Jerusalem residents currently have, allowing them to travel freely to Israel and within the West Bank, increasing the opportunities for employment and commerce. A big and essential ingredient for the success of a charter city is having, from the beginning, a legal framework that catalyzes economic growth. The good news is that Palestine already has some of the elements needed for economic growth. It has an educated workforce, relatively simple and low taxation, and an international community willing to invest. The charter city would be a special economic zone where goods could be imported duty-free, potentially enabling it to become a manufacturing hub. This would require amending the Paris Protocol, the part of the Oslo Accords that governs economic relations. If our Palestinian city-state is to truly reach its economic potential, it will also require a clean and efficient bureaucracy. Currently, Palestine ranks 117th in the world in ease of doing business, about middle of the pack for the region, but not good enough to attract a high level of investment and prosperity. Activities like registering a business or resolving business disputes need to be clear, simple, and inexpensive if we want our city to truly thrive. Now we're getting into the elements that will make or break our charter city, the institutions. For Salam, I see institutions being initially run by international partners and progressively handed over to a local civilian authority. One of the most important institutions is a democratic government that respects and enforces basic individual liberties. In order to create such a rule of law culture, a local democratically elected council should be established early on. However, at first, their members should only have authority over less sensitive institutions such as city beautification and possibly sanitation and healthcare. As the city grows, competency builds, and a new culture emerges, authority could be handed over with the approval of an international council that would evaluate the local government's readiness. There are 4 institutions I view as particularly critical to creating a peaceful and prosperous charter city. These will, by necessity, be the last institutions to be transferred to local authority, and the process will likely take decades. The first one is security. Having strong security is not only essential to gain Israel's support, but also to ensure its survival against the leaders and civilians who might be against what Salam stands for. Unfortunately, it is likely many Palestinian extremists will see the charter city as a betrayal and the people who move there as traitors. They may also see freedom of the press and certain forms of free expression permitted in the city-state as ideological threats. It is critical that the citizens of Salam be protected and are able to live in safety. Our charter city will require a police force to enforce the rules that safeguard individual liberties and security forces to protect the border effectively in a manner that deters any potential aggression from the Palestinian Authority. Initially, security should be handled by international peacekeepers and police. Local forces should be trained by these international partners to be loyal to the people of Salam and not the Palestinian Authority. The second critical institution is the Judiciary. Palestinian law is a mess, as it is an amalgam of the legal systems of all the powers that once conquered it. I propose that our charter city adopt the judiciary and common law legal system of Ireland, a country that has good relations with Palestine. This would greatly simplify the legal system and facilitate commerce. A similar move was performed by Dubai and allowed it to become a global financial hub. Gradually, Irish judges would be replaced by trained local judges. Finally, and just as critically, the institutions that are critical to the future of our charter city concern information. The first is the media. It is crucial that our media regulator allow a free and diverse media industry while enforcing the law that prohibits the incitement of violence. Accompanying media as an institution that disseminates information is education. In the previous video, I stated that the indoctrination of young Palestinians was perpetuating the conflict by feeding them the idea that Israel is the enemy and they should take back the entire territory of the State of Israel. To break the cycle, our charter city will use an internationally developed curriculum that teaches peace and critical thinking. Teachers should come from different parts of the world and be fully committed to the mission of teaching peace. As the charter city becomes more established and Palestinians become increasingly aware of its success, governorates across Palestine could choose to adopt elements of the charter or even adopt it in whole if approved through a referendum. This process could be modeled on the EU accession process, whereby countries are added to the EU after a rigorous vetting process. Serious institutional reform would, however, be required for existing governments to adopt the Salam Charter. The charter idea may even prove to be an eventual long-term solution to the question of Israeli settlements, though admittedly, this may just be me being optimistic. More than 400,000 people live in West Bank settlements outside of East Jerusalem, making possible future relocation very difficult. Living under charter city law could provide an alternative to demolishing settlements while respecting international law. Instead of living under Israeli law, which the UN has deemed illegal, or likely being thrown to the wolves if living under the current Palestinian Authority, settlements could adopt charter city rules and governance. They would ostensibly live in Palestinian-controlled territory and pay taxes to a Palestinian government, but would be able to live safely and have their rights protected. In the current environment, it is hard to imagine that Israeli settlers might accept anything like this. However, after years of witnessing a peaceful Palestinian city-state that truly respects the rights of all people, their attitudes might change. The idea of Salam may sound promising, but it clearly will face daunting challenges in establishing it. The first is that the proposed territory is not completely empty. There are, in fact, 3 Israeli settlements located within its boundaries. However, these settlements are quite small. Their combined population is less than 1,000. This makes any negotiated solution, whether buying them out or allowing them to stay, a lot easier. Another possible challenge could come from the current Palestinian government. Even though the establishment of Salam would benefit them in many ways, there is still a chance they would oppose the idea. Since Salam exists entirely within Area C lands, Israel could choose to establish it unilaterally. The Palestinian Authority may also wish to seize the city-state after it has been established. This is why having an international security present is absolutely essential. A final challenge to address here is land distribution when the Charter City is established. If Salam is successful, its land will become very valuable, and it is thus important that it not all end up in the hands of the wealthy and well-connected. I propose that the Charter City's lands be managed by an internationally overseen land development corporation that all Palestinians would own by having shares in it. The purpose of this corporation would be to maximize the financial returns for all shareholders, i.e., all Palestinians. In order to prevent hoarding, the sale of shares would not be permitted. Not only would this mean that the benefits of Salam would be distributed evenly, it would give Palestinians another reason to buy into this project. Will a charter city in Palestine bring about a lasting peace by itself? No. Will it resolve all past grievances? No. But it could bring us back on the trajectory towards peace. After working on this idea for the past few weeks, I feel something that is strange and uncommon when talking about this conflict: excitement and optimism. I hope after watching this video you feel the same way as well. Do you think a charter city can help bring peace to the region, or is it pie in the sky? Let me know in the comments below. If you were inspired by this video, I'm looking to take this idea further. There's many details I didn't go into, such as planning, logistics, and infrastructure. If you want to collaborate and help the idea of Salam grow, please send an email to policythwonk@gmail.com.